So, you got a film for me?
Actually, sir, I've got a TV epic based on the story of Gideon.
Oh, that sounds long.
I'll just tell you the story of the first series and you can see if you like it.
Good idea, crack on.
Okay, so there's this terrible curse on the tribes of Israel. The Midianites and the Amalekites have come together and they're swarming. These guys, they ride camels, their faces are painted with strange designs, and we see them pillaging and burning villages, and they scream like they're in an ecstatic state from all the blood.
Oh, they sound a bit like monsters.
Yeah, like zombies. And you see people making like barricades and securing.
Wait, because I'm curious about how your films work. Do these bad guys, right, know that they're evil and that?
Well, they probably have their reasons, that's true. Not very good ones, maybe. But yeah, I suppose they think what they're doing is honourable or reasonable somehow. Maybe actually we can show this. We could like see how the Amalekites and the Midianites first made the alliance, and there can be an evil Midianite chief with like a horned helmet and a deathly face, and there can be an Amalekite general with an eye patch calling the Hebrews scum, and he can have spit in the corners of his mouth like he's some kind of deranged PE teacher.
No, wait. Let me just explain what I mean. Because to these bad guys, the good guys are probably the bad guys, right? And the good guys think the bad guys are monsters, but the bad guys think the good guys are monsters. So, what I'm asking is...
Well, maybe both sides are right, People are monsters.
I suppose you'd have to say they certainly can be.
So anyway, there's this guy called Gideon, and he's played by Ryan Gosling, and he keeps himself to himself.
Sounds like Ryan.
And we find him pressing wine. And he's doing that thing where you walk around in a giant tub full of grapes with bare feet. And then this angel comes.
Angel?
Yeah, he's played by Will Smith, and he has wraparound dark glasses. And he's not like you though. He's really cool.
What do you mean?
And Will Smith, the angel, says he has a secret mission for Gideon from God. And Gideon says, God has abandoned us. That's why we're being overrun by our enemies. And anyway, I've got work to do. I'm a no-nonsense gruff agricultural worker, and he goes back to his stomping, and then Will Smith pops up on the other side of the tub, and he's all like, obviously not, pal, because here I am, a messenger from the big guy. And Gideon spits, surly farm worker that he is, and he denies that Will Smith is even an angel.
I'm not surprised. Wraparound sunglasses.
So the angel says, put a sacrifice to the Lord right there on that stone, and Gideon says, I don't sacrifice anymore because the Lord has run out of miracles for us. And the angel says, just give a sacrifice and I will prove that I am an angel. And Gideon says, I don't have anything. He says, give what you've got. And so he pulls his sandwich out of his pocket, his lunch, and he puts it down on the stone. And the angel points with his staff, and the sandwich combusts, and the smoke just goes up to the roof of the barn. And for some reason Ryan Gosling just leaps out of the tub and he storms off, and Will Smith smiles wryly and he follows. And then Ryan turns to him and with restrained emotion...
Sounds like Ryan.
He says to Will Smith, I'm the weakest brother of the weakest family in the weakest tribe. Gideon's part of the Manasseh tribe, and sure enough they're the weakest of the 12 at this point. So why would God choose me? It doesn't make sense. And then the angel replies, and he says this with all of Will Smith's charm and friendliness. Because. And then he just smiles and walks away, just like he knows that Gideon has got this.
Hey, I'll tell you what Will Smith does have. A screen presence.
So then we can see Gideon makes an altar where the sandwich got burnt, and he does some religious stuff, blah blah, and then he starts off on his mission, and he has to go into town, and he starts trying to get people to join his new army and kind of like, get people to be worried about the Midianites and the Amalekites, even though they're a really, really long way away at this point. And people just have other stuff going on. Real life is still going on unabated, and they don't have time to worry about zombies. And Ryan Gosling's feeling really dispirited, and he goes back to his dad's house, and we find out that his dad actually has a temple to Baal in the town, and he's some sort of snake oil salesman, and he's also a drunkard. And he can't help Ryan for these reasons, and he's busy, charging people for fortunes and making money off this sort of sacred phallus pole thing that he's got out back.
You mean like a maypole? I love those.
So Ryan is sitting alone in his dad's house, and he's in his old room, which has all of his teenage stuff everywhere. And then Will Smith is suddenly just sitting next to him on the bed, and the angel tells Gideon what he has to do. He has to burn down his dad's altar to Baal and do a sacrifice to God, or no one will listen to him. And Ryan is like, what? I can't. But the angel is just gone.
That is just like us.
So Ryan does it. He takes down the big sacred phallus thing, and then we have a scene where he chops it up into little bits with an axe, and a whole crowd forms around him, like watching him commit this sacrilege, and it's really hard work. And so he has to take his top off, and he's dripping with sweat as he chops up this pole.
Oh, this show's going to be popular.
What's wrong with popular?
Nothing. It's just, I suppose, this series is meant to be based on a book that is about humans and God, right? About the path to the divine, about the narrow gate.
Do you think it would be better if it wasn't popular?
No, it's just...
Do you have a problem with people taking their tops off?
No.
Wait,
no.
sir. We have an image of gorgeous masculinity chopping down a big phallus dedicated to an idol. Can't you see the poetry there?
I do. It just always amazes me how you humans can make circumcision a cause for bravado.
Well, sir, you have to work with what you've got. And if circumcision didn't win some victories, and I mean proper cinematic victories against zombie bad guys, then it never would have lasted. So anyway, some in the crowd are really angry with Gideon because the phallus, they like it, it's given them boons or whatever, but Gideon is just ignoring them, and he piles up all the bits and he sweeps up. And there's this one really furious guy though, and he goes and pulls his dad out of bed, and his dad is played by Jeff Bridges, by the way, and Jeff Bridges gets up and everyone is waiting for him to be mad about his son burning down this thing to Baal, and then they tell him what happened, and they wait for him to kill his son to avenge the honour of the god Baal. And his dad looks over at Gideon and he rubs his eyes. He's hungover, of course. He's a drunkard. And he says that if Baal wants to defend himself, he can. And everyone is just crazy with him. But he shrugs it all off and he just lights a cigarette. So he's kind of sacrificed his profession for his son. And Ryan and Jeff, they go in and they start making breakfast. And they're really reconnecting Gideon and his father. But then someone comes and knocks at the door, and there's news all around town that the farms in the countryside around and about have been attacked and burnt down, and refugees are coming in, and they're telling tales of the Amalekites and the Midianites eating human flesh. And this is just what Gideon was trying to warn everyone about, but now it's too late. And they all run up to the walls around the town, and you see there are thousands of zombies everywhere. You don't know what it's like being a human. Our enemies are really scary and horrible, and they genuinely do really horrid things. Alright? We know they probably experience the things we do as scary and horrible. Yeah, but this story isn't about that. It's about an experience that if you were a human, you would understand. And if you'd let me finish, you'd see that this tale does get a little bit more complex.
Okay.
So now the people believe in Gideon and they rally around him, and the gates of the town are locked and barricaded, and they set fire to the bits of chopped up phallus thing, and they do a big sacrifice to the living God. And people are generous. They give their finest and offer it up to God. And they're feeling good, but Gideon gets all freaked out, and he's just the image of the enemies covering all the land around the city and shuffling around the walls of the town, having the whole place surrounded. It's just freaking him out. They're all trapped in there. They could run out of food. There's so many more of the Midianites and Amalekites than there are of them. And the weirdest thing is that the Midianites and Amalekites are just standing there stock still. And they're just staring up at the people on top of the wall. None of them are moving at all, and we'll focus in on a fly that's crawling across the evil chief's painted face. It's going to be really freaky. And so anyway, all the people are asking Gideon what they should do. And they correctly believe he's been sent by God to sort this mess out. But Gideon doesn't know, and he just goes off to bed. And people can't believe it, but he's got nothing for them. And as he goes into his dad's place, Gideon says to himself, if that old fleece on the ground has dew on it tomorrow morning, it's going to be a sign that it's the right time to attack and that we're going to win the day. Now, all through the night, starting at dusk, the Midianites and Amalekites thump on the walls and the gates of the city with the butts of their spears, all in unison in a slow and steady thrum. And folks can't sleep, and babies are crying across the town. Now, in the morning, Gideon gets up, and his dad is asleep in his chair with his head on the table, drooling. And Gideon goes outside, and he checks the fleece. And it does have dew on it, though the ground around is dry. But Gideon is still racked with doubt. And even though everyone is begging for him to do something, make a decision, he does nothing. People come and report to him. They're already getting low on supplies, and they only have enough grain for 3 days, and that's on starvation rations, and the harvest hadn't come in yet, and people are getting restless, and no help is coming, and how are they going to break the siege? And some of the men are shouting at Gideon with desperate fear in their voices, but Gideon is still pierced by doubts. He's like a tyre with a slow puncture, and he just prevaricates the whole day, and then he goes to bed again and again. He says to God, if the fleece has no dew on it in the morning, then you mean us, Lord, to have victory. And the next morning he wakes up, and though the ground is wet and soaked with dew, the fleece is dry. But Gideon is still freaked out.
For goodness sake, man, have some faith.
And he kind of prevaricates all day again. And then it gets to the evening and people are putting pressure on him. And some of the people that were shouting at him, or one of them just grabs him by the collar. And then people have to drag him away. And finally Gideon gives in. He says, okay, get everyone together at the gate. And then he goes and he does that thing that people do in movies, where you go into a bathroom in a restaurant and you look in the mirror and you splash your face with cold water.
People do that for real, you know. A lot.
And then Will Smith suddenly comes out of one of the cubicles and he says to Ryan, you've got too many people. And Gideon is like, what? They outnumber us 10-1. But Will Smith says, if you win as you are now, people will think they were saved by their own hand. Okay, what do you want me to do? Says Gideon. Tell anyone who is scared to go home. Replies Will Smith. Anyone who would prefer just to get an early night can go and do that. And so Gideon goes out and tells them that. And obviously everyone's aghast, especially the other leaders, but Gideon shrugs them off and he encourages those who are sort of looking at each other nervously to, yes, go off and go home to their families. They will not get in trouble. There will be no shame on them. They can just leave. And then Will Smith is at Gideon's ear again and he's saying that there are still too many. And so Gideon leads them down to the pump to get a drink. And Will Smith says to him, take only those who drink from the trough with their hands, and not those who stoop to the water. And so Gideon does that. He sends home all those who stoop to the water. And now everyone really thinks he's gone loco. They've seen him talking to himself, and here he is sending fighters home when they're already vastly outnumbered. And there's an argument, and Gideon just storms off. He's fed up, and he's beginning to think he's going crazy himself. And Will Smith tries to talk to him, but Gideon tells him where to go.
Won't even listen to an angel. By George.
Anyway, Gideon is walking through the streets feeling pretty terrible, and he overhears someone telling someone else about their dream. And in this dream, a loaf of bread rolls down from the city into the Midianite camp, and it strikes a tent, which promptly falls over and collapses. And Gideon's thinking about this dream, and then he understands something. The bread is the agricultural. That's them, the Manasseh tribe. And the tent symbolises the nomads, the Midianites and the Amalekites. And so the dream is prophetic. And he blows the trumpet and everyone gathers. And you know those inspiring speeches people do in films?
Yeah?
He doesn't do one.
Typical Gosling, that.
Instead, he tells everyone to get a trumpet, a jar, and a torch.
Hey, this sounds a bit Blue Peter.
And then they go down into the catacombs and they go through a secret tunnel that leads to outside the city walls.
Hang on, if there was a secret tunnel this whole time, why didn't people just go through it before to get food or escape the zombies or whatever?
Because they were scared of the zombies. Actually, no. You see that Will Smith is leading Gideon, who is leading everyone else. So they didn't actually know about this secret passageway before.
Angels underground, eh? Whatever next. I bet he doesn't even take off his sunglasses.
Of course not. And they all have their jars with the torches inside, softly uplighting their faces, and they have their trumpets, and they creep fearfully through the narrow passageway, and finally they get outside, and it's dusk, and they go up behind the Amalekites and the Midianites, who are just shuffling up towards the wall to begin their nightly thumping, and the Manasseh troops creep carefully and space themselves out until they're encircling the enemy. And when Gideon sees that they're ready, he stands and gives the signal, and they all lift their trumpets and they blow. And the enemies turn, completely confused, and some of them can't tell where the noise is coming from, and they look up into the sky, and some peer into the dark shrubberies, seeing the odd ghostly face illuminated.
Ghosts versus zombies. Nice.
And then we have a shot from behind Gideon's men, and you see that quietly along the wall a few archers are raising their heads and drawing their bows. And finally the trumpets cease, and when the last one is silent, you see a few Midianites look at one another and grip their swords and spears, and a camel goes
I love it when they make that noise.
And the evil chief guy with the skull-white face paint and the horned helmet is just lifting his blade, and he's going to shout attack when Gideon throws his jar at him, and it smashes and just explodes, engulfing the evil chief of darkness in flames.
Why would a torch in a jar explode?
Please, sir, just leave this one. And the other Manasseh troops throw theirs, and they all explode on the enemy, and the Midianites and the Amalekites are in disarray, and they're running around everywhere on fire, and the archers are having an easy time picking them out and putting them out of their misery. And very soon the battle is over, and the remnant of the Midianites and the Amalekites are leaping on their camels, and they're disappearing off into the night.
Doesn't sound very zombie-ish.
No, you see, it was just an act. And so Gideon leads the troops back into the town, through the gate this time, and everyone cheers, and he waves them off, and he tells them to shut it. He's grumpy. All the glory is for God, he says, and he tells them to sacrifice in thanksgiving. He looks over, and at the back of the crowd is Will Smith, who nods once and then is gone.
Wow, I mean, that is quite a story, I suppose. And is that the end of the series?
Yes. Do you want to quickly know what we've got waiting for us in the future series?
Don't suppose it's happily ever after?
Sorry, sir. It's a downward spiral where Gideon's military power pushes him into a slow but inevitable moral decline, where his superstitious dice man-like tactics and odd decisions lead him into ever greater acts of bizarre violence.
Oh, that's a shame.
Hopefully one that will be loved by critics and viewers alike, sir.